JRPGs have long captivated us with rich stories, memorable characters, and innovative gameplay systems. However, not every entry in the genre lives up to these lofty expectations. Despite the passion and creativity that's often associated with the genre, some titles outright suck. Whether it's boring stories, boring characters, or missed opportunities to innovate, there's unfortunately a lot of games that just fell flat. Yes, that's right. So in today's video, we're talking about some JRPGs that really, honestly, aren't that great. And in order to help me do that, I've invited 12 of the coolest JRPG content creators out there. So please look forward to the guests that we have on the video today. Don't forget to like and subscribe to them. And if you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to like and subscribe here and leave a comment down below. Let me know what JRPGs you thought sucked or you were disappointed with. So let's get to the first 3 guests of the video today. It's all dedicated to Xenoblade.
Hello, you gorgeous human being. This is MissBubbles. If you love everything RPGs and cozy games, make sure to check out my YouTube channel because I cover both of these genres. So before making this video, I talked to Erek and I was like, Erek, I think my pick is just gonna raise some pitchforks in the comment section because I know y'all adore this game, but Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was a complete disappointment to me. When I saw all the hype about it and how fans adore the characters and the story, I gotta say, the excitement and eagerness that I had to try it myself was just way out of bounds. It looks great graphics-wise, the music is beautiful to say the least, and having access to a JRPG on the Nintendo Switch that I can enjoy at any time, anywhere, was a big selling point. However, oh my god, is this a big however, that map is completely frustrating, weird, confusing. I cannot deal with it for the life of me. Trying to figure out where I want to go and going from point A to point B was extremely tedious and it made the journey just not so good. And also, can we talk about the freaking battle system? I don't want to be playing a game where I need a PhD and learning about the battle system. I've watched countless videos, I've restarted the game, I've read tutorials. I cannot understand how to play this game. Why does it have to be so complicated? Somebody please explain this to me. You literally need a degree in this freaking game to understand how the combat works. So after trying over and over again, I gave up. I was so disappointed because I wanted to experience the joy of playing this game on the Nintendo Switch like others did. And to my surprise, a lot of people actually feel the same way about both the map and the combat system. So that kind of makes the pressure a little bit not so, you know, big on myself. Like I'm not upset with myself anymore that I just couldn't get into it. Now moving forward, I have Xenoblade Chronicles 3, which I cannot wait to play more, and also Xenoblade Chronicles X, which I heard is actually pretty easy to get into, so cannot wait to play that in March. Thank you so much, Erek, for having me over on your channel, and until next time, stay bubbly.
Hey everybody, it's femtrooper, and thank you, Erek Glad, for having me on today to talk about a very disappointing JRPG, and the offender today is Xenoblade Chronicles 2 Torna, the Golden Country. Other than the fact that I actually did find this game just okay, like there's one reason I hate this game, but overall I wasn't really into the characters, I wasn't really into the story, it was just really okay. So that alone kind of made it disappointing. That's a personal thing, that's just me, a lot of people really like the story, that's cool. The really annoying thing in this game is that every single side quest was mandatory. In Torna, they called this your community levels. And basically, you would do side quests for people and get a community ranking, and there were levels. You'd get level 1, the new side quests would open up, you could do those. When I first found out about the community level thing and that there were side quests, of course I ignored them because I'm not into side quests, really not my jam, so I obviously didn't do it. Then I got further into the game and found out that, oh, now there's basically a block. You cannot go further in the game. You cannot beat the game unless you've done every single side quest. Not like some or like 50% of them or like please do a couple. Every single one. I'm sorry, but this is the worst thing in game design ever. I don't care. I will stand on this forever. I really don't like it. It's a terrible thing to do. I basically had to go back and do every single side quest, and we're talking like boring side quests, like fetch quests, you know, go defeat 3 enemies, go find 3 herbs for me, like boring stuff that I hate I had to do. So because I was so far into the game, I did it, but honestly, brutal. Absolutely unnecessary, totally disrespectful of my time, not cool, and for that, I hate Torna. I'm excited to see what everybody else picked. Thanks again for having me on today, Erek, and I hope to see you guys at my channel.
Hi, I'm Tantacles. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 dares to ask the question that's on everyone's mind. What if we increase the number of AI-controlled characters in Xenoblade from 2 to 6? Now don't get me wrong, I love combining Mio and Noah into a surfboard-slinging juggernaut, but the first and second games already had a huge problem. The AI is not that smart, and getting it to do what you want at the right time feels impossible. And you'd think with 6 there would be enough redundancy that your characters would topple after break is inflicted every single time. Heal your characters when they're low on HP. Hold off on the smash until the chain attack starts. But they just don't. But even when they do, with 7 people screaming out their attacks, it's hard to tell who's doing what. The game does try to remedy this problem by allowing you to change your controlled character in real time. But for someone like me, with clumsy sausage fingers and the mental velocity of a lobotomized sea slug, I can barely figure out which character is next in the rotation, let alone determine on the fly which move is best with only a second or 2 to act. Add to this the fact that the game implemented a job system. This means that my characters are constantly switching classes and abilities, so I can't use visual indicators to determine which character I should be switching to, which means I'm even more stymied by this system. Did I eventually figure out a setup to deal massive damage with my characters? Yes. Did I eventually learn to love this game? Yes. But even with a deep understanding of the combat system, I felt that 7 characters in the party was too many. Don't buy a boat.
Thank you so much, MissBubbles, femtrooper, and Tantacles for covering all things Xenoblade. Let's move on to another fan favorite game that got a sequel that wasn't really that great. Take it away, David.
Hi there, everybody. This is David over at the channel DavidVinc, and thank you, Erek, so much for having me on. Whenever he asked me about a disappointing game, my mind, raced around because there were so many disappointing games out there. I thought about, Dawn of Mana, Lufia, The Ruins of Bore, because it's so frickin' boring. But then my mind went to the #1 most disappointing game I have ever played, and that is our little friend Chrono Cross. Let me set the stage for you. It's 1995, Christmas Day. You open up Chrono Trigger, and it's like the best game ever made, and you love it, and you play it through, and you just have a blast. Then, about 5 or so years later, it is Christmas of 1999, and what do? You get Chrono Cross, and you're like, oh my god, it's the sequel to Chrono Trigger. This thing is going to be fantastic, and you pop it in, and you start playing it, and you're like, wait, this is so different. This doesn't have anything to do with time travel. Yeah, there's interdimensional warping and stuff. Oh, wait, I don't have a set 6 group party member. I have 44 different party members. This has become Pokemon. Gotta collect them all. Oh, wait, the 2 dimensions are pretty much exactly the same with the exact same NPCs in the exact same spots saying pretty much the exact same thing. So you're doing the exact same thing over and over and over again. Oh, wait. All your characters have stupid accents, and you just want to smack the crap out of them? Oh, wait, all the battles have super long loading times with the screen, panning each and every way to make sure that the battles take as long as humanly possible, and you just fall asleep? Oh, there's no experience points either, so you can't level up? Oh my god. It wasn't until much later on, whenever I got access to the internet, that I realized this was actually a sequel to a visual novel, Radical Dreamers, and the disappointment was palpable, y'all. You've no idea. It was ridiculous. So yeah, that is my choice. Chrono Cross. I know a lot of people won't agree with this, but I hated it. Thank you again for watching, and have a good day.
Now, I know there's a lot of Pokemon haters out there, and I cannot wait to have these next 3 creators talk everything Pokemon. And honestly, I'm sure there's a lot of you out there who will agree with them.
What's going on, everyone? Slam-zany here. I want to thank Erek for having me on today to talk about my most disappointing JRPG. When asked this question, I couldn't think of another game that brought me more disappointment than Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. When Pokemon Scarlet and Violet were announced, they carried the promise of innovation, the first fully open world Pokemon experience in a vibrant new region. However, the final product left me and many fans very disappointed. First, I need to get the biggest and most glaring issue out of the way, and it's definitely the poor technical performance. At launch, and even now, the games were riddled with bugs ranging from amusing graphical glitches to completely game-breaking crashes. I frequently encountered frame rate drops, textures failing to load properly, and Pokemon completely clipping through the environment. For a franchise as popular and profitable as Pokemon, these issues were not only frustrating but super surprising. The open world design, heralded as a major selling point, lacked the freedom and creativity of comparable games at the time. While I could theoretically tackle the gym leaders in any order, the lack of level scaling made certain paths significantly more challenging, which discouraged exploration and undermined the idea of true player choice. Exploration often felt shallow, with few meaningful rewards or secrets to uncover. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet had the potential to redefine the series for a new generation of players, yet they fell short in several key areas. It will take a lot from the newest Pokemon game to bring me back in, but my love for the series will always be there, and I will definitely give it a chance. And I just hope that they take this as a lesson and really try to do something special for longtime fans with this next release. Anyway, that's it for me in this one. Thanks again to Erek for having me on, and I really hope to see you all at my channel.
Hey guys, Nishquik here from the channel Nishquikpops, and thank you so much, Erek Lad, for having me on this collab to talk about the most disappointing JRPG for me. And unfortunately, with a heavy heart, I do gotta say the most disappointing JRPG for me personally was Pokemon Sword in 2019. So I remember after playing Zelda Breath of the Wild, Super Mario Odyssey, all these amazing Nintendo franchises from my childhood, realized with such amazing worlds and gameplay on the Nintendo Switch, I was so excited and I was really looking forward to what Pokemon had in store. And we saw the reveal trailer for Pokemon Sword and Shield. I loved the designs, I loved what the new Pokemon looked like, but I was still a little hesitant in my mind about how big of a leap this would be, because my expectations were that this was the first Pokemon mainline game, the next generation on a Nintendo Switch and on a home console. Like, this is the first for a new generation of Pokemon. And I didn't really follow a lot of the trailers. I saw there was a lot of controversy, and I didn't really follow that. I heard about the national decks not being included and a lot of the graphics not being good. But what really hit me is when I got the game and I played the game, it just didn't feel like a Pokemon experience. It didn't feel like a step in the right direction. It didn't feel like an advancement. It just felt like I was playing the same Pokemon on the Switch with graphics and worlds that I really wasn't impressed with. And one of my friends came over once and he saw me playing the game and he's like, this literally looks like the same games we used to play on the DS, but on the Switch, and just not as much of a jump that we would have expected. And I kind of agreed with him. So unfortunately, Pokemon Sword and Shield was a very big disappointment. I only spent like 10 hours in it, and I didn't continue it after that, unfortunately. So thank you once again, Erek Lad, for having me on this collab. If you enjoy Nintendo and JRPG content, check me out on the channel Nishquikpops. I hope to see you guys there. I'll see you guys in the next one later.
What's going on, guys? Uppernimbus here. So when Erek Lad had suggested the idea about disappointing JRPGs, the only game that came to mind, or should I say two games that came to mind, were Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. Now I realize that my game choice is a pretty easy target when it comes to disappointing JRPGs, but I'd still like to give these games the beating that they deserve. Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl are complete and utter garbage, and the games really knew how to piss me off and grind my gears. So as you know with the Pokemon series, we've had plenty of remakes and remasters from the previous generations with games such as Fire Red and Leaf Green and Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. And those remakes had a lot of love and care put into them, and were exciting reimaginings of the original versions. But when it came to BDSP, that was a whole different can of worms. So many fans and appreciators of the 4th generation of Pokemon were beyond hyped at the concept of Gen 4 receiving the remake treatment that they initially deserved, but were instead greeted with a fungal-infested cactus to the face. In all honesty, Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl have got to be the most soulless and lifeless Pokemon games I've ever played in my life. The thing that sucks about it all is that these games still play like most other traditional Pokemon games, but are lacking in creativity and taking risks, as these remakes are literally one-to-one, but still somehow managed to disappoint me by playing it way too safe. BDSP's art style and general graphic fidelity are just straight up plain, flat, and forgettable. Everything in these games visually look like discount Fisher-Price toys, and not even the children of today would want to pick up this garbage and play these atrocities that dare call themselves entries in the Pokemon series. These remakes are so horrifying that it genuinely makes me want to scull a gallon of expired milk and projectile vomit all over them. Erek, my man, thank you so much for having me on this collaboration of yours. It's always a blast working alongside you, and I really appreciate you having me on board. And of course, I look forward to everybody else's choice within this video. So until the next time, everybody, uppernimbus is signing off.
Thank you so much, slam-zany, nishquik, and uppernimbus for covering a few Pokemon games there. Unfortunately, some of the more recent titles that, haven't been received super well. And moving on to some really cool creators from a new podcast that's popped up called the JRPG Pursuit. We've got Brandon from JustTheGems and Emily Orbalology talking about some JRPGs that they really didn't love.
Hey friends, it's Brandon from JustTheGems. Thanks so much, Erek, for having me on. Though, to be honest, I'm kind of bummed to have to say this about a game from these creators. So, to preface it all, I was a huge fan of Crystar. The gameplay was stiff and the levels and enemies were redundant, but there was such a compelling story and fantastic English voice work that it more than carried me through the entire game. When I learned Furyu was making something of a spiritual successor in Cry Machina, I was pumped. It seemed like it was going to solve my biggest issues with Crystar. The gameplay looked fast and fluid, and graphically, even as a AA game, it still looked beautiful. So add that to a great story and voice work, and boom, you have an experience tailor-made for me. But Cry Machina was sort of a devil's bargain. I wanted Crystar with better gameplay, and I got it, but what I had to give up ruined the experience for me. See, to me, voice work is one of the most important parts of storytelling in a game. It was probably the thing I liked the most about Crystar. I came in with an expectation that I'd be getting something just as good, or better. Instead, I booted up the game to find there were no English voiceovers at all. I vainly poked around the menus hoping that there was a language option, but of course it was pointless. I was disheartened, but I tried to press on. The story of Cry Machina is pretty interesting. It's very existential, a bunch of androids fighting to become human, a whole lot of complex machinations running behind the scenes. Unfortunately, the gameplay and story weren't enough on their own to carry me. While the story was interesting, the way it was being delivered to me wasn't getting through. Not to mention, despite looking better and playing better, it still suffered quite a bit from the repetition that dragged Crystar down as well. Without the excellent vocal performances, I had no life raft to hang on to. Honestly, I feel bad because I know that the localizers would love nothing more than to put English voiceover in the game, but they're restrained by budget, and that's just reality. I would not say that Cry Machina is a bad game. In fact, if you like Japanese voiceover and you're into fast-paced action RPGs, it might very well be up your alley, but it qualifies as one of my biggest disappointments just because of how far off my expectations were from the reality I received.
Hey there, this is Emily from Orbalology, and one of my most disappointing JRPG experiences in recent times, unfortunately, has to be my time with Rune Factory 5. Back when Xseed and Marvelous announced that the latest entry in the Rune Factory series was finally coming to the Nintendo Switch, I was beyond hyped. From all the teasers that we had leading up to the release, it really looked like this installment was going to be a huge step up for the franchise with very ambitious graphics and 3D renderings. I was just so excited, especially because the previous entry, Rune Factory 4, was one of my favorite games on the Nintendo 3DS. So I had very high expectations, to say the least. So when I received my pre-order copy on the first day, I put about 15 or so hours into my play session, and unfortunately I decided to put the game down. Mostly due to a lot of performance and graphical issues playing in handheld mode, which is how I primarily play my Nintendo Switch. The story also felt rather uninspired, didn't really have the same magical experience that I had in the prior Rune Factory games, and I also felt that the characters lacked a little bit of personality in some aspects and would repeat a lot of the same dialogue. So when I did put down Rune Factory 5, I was really hoping that we would get some sort of patch that would help smooth out all those issues I was encountering and just make it a better experience for me to dive back into. Unfortunately, that never happened. So at this point, I'm really hoping that maybe the Switch 2 will help breathe new life into Rune Factory 5 and turn this huge disappointment for me into a more enhanced and better experience overall. But we'll have to wait and see if that is something that will happen or if I will continue to be disappointed with this game.
And speaking of the JRPG Pursuit, if you want to check out the most recent episode, I was actually a guest on there covering all of the Final Fantasy battle systems. It's a really cool watch, so please check that out. We've got 3 more friends and their picks before we get to mine. Take it away with this next pick, man. It doesn't look good.
What's up, everyone? I'm Luca from feiitogaming, and I have a question for you. What do you get when you combine a great sci-fi JRPG series that is known for its fantastic action combat, its memorable characters, and an intergalactic adventure with a low budget and no creative vision whatsoever? That's right, you get the most disappointing JRPG in history. And of course that is Star Ocean 5 Integrity and Faithlessness. Square Enix released 4 games prior to this, and sure, they all had their flaws, but the Star Ocean series was always one of my favorite series in gaming. So of course I was excited for the 5th entry, the first one on the PlayStation 4. But instead of a lighthearted adventure on multiple planets with characters I actually cared for, all we got was a lame story on one planet, with a plot so forgettable that by the end of the game I didn't even remember what happened in the beginning. The great action combat system of the last 2 games was butchered because you had all 7 characters in combat, which created a chaos without any depth, and simply copied animations from previous games, which is super lazy and shows how little budget Square Enix put into this. Same goes for the music, which is barely anything original and just a collection of tracks from the previous games. And the rest is just an awful and uninspiring piece of garbage. Side quests are boring as it can get and don't reward you with anything useful. The graphics are bad as they hardly any details in the environment, which makes this world feel so dead. And the backtracking? Oh, they had some nerve letting us walk through the same 5 areas over and over again, which makes this game feel so incredibly limited. Okay, I could probably go on and tell you more reasons why Star Ocean 5 is such a disappointing game, but then this video would be an hour long, so I'll leave it at that. Star Ocean is a great series, but the 5th entry is simply one of the worst JRPGs I've ever played. Thanks so much, Erek, for inviting me and giving me the chance to treat Star Ocean 5 as it deserves. Alright, see you guys next time.
Hey everyone, it's James here from DReviewTing, and we all have those companies that we just absolutely love, that just are the seal of quality. Well, for me, that company is Square Enix, and they've been going since like the late 80s, and they have been releasing bangers ever since. However, this also brings me to right where my biggest disappointment in the company actually was. Growing up, I remember playing amazing titles such as Romance and Saga, Breath of Fire, Tobal 1, Brave Fencer Musashi, Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, and Valkyrie Profile, and this was the issue. I was super excited when they announced that they were bringing out a new Valkyrie Profile game called Valkyrie Elysium. Under the new umbrella, Valkyrie Elysium director Takahiro Kondo was noted to be marketing a new beginning of the series, and this was something I was really excited for. This was definitely not what we got though. I was absolutely gutted when I got through playing some of this game and realized that there was just very little to actually do and play through in terms of story, and it just kind of all fell apart for me. Now, the original game was set in a 2D sort of setting. It was sort of almost side-scroller, whereas this was a 3D title. Now, this didn't really bother me as I'm a big fan of the E series, and to be fair, the combat was actually pretty solid in that respect. But the game just lacked any sort of depth and just felt really underdeveloped. There were so many areas that just felt like they could have had so much more within it. The world of Midgar was just lifeless and empty, and it was just really drab and boring. The game's graphics were also kind of something to point out in this, because they were just kind of like, I don't know, they felt like an older PlayStation title, which I don't really mind. The setting was really cool. It was set in sort of like a medieval setting. But overall, it just felt like there was just so much more they could have done with this title. Despite going in a new direction, you would have thought that somewhere along the line they would have actually acknowledged the previous series. But other than you playing as a Valkyrie known as Maria, doing Odin's bidding to go and basically do fetch quests, there don't seem to be any other ties to the previous games, and it just felt really half-baked. The only really cool thing that I could honestly say about the game was they had some enquires that were really cool. You can recruit them throughout your game, and that actually adds a really nice little element to the combat, and I really did like that part of it. But other than that, there weren't really any other saving graces. So in case you couldn't tell, I actually dropped the game and I just couldn't be bothered with it. And there are so many other games that are worth your time out there. This one really did disappoint me. So I want to thank Erek for having me on, and let's move on to the next entry.
Okay, another collaboration. So disappointing JRPGs. It's got to be a minute to 2 minutes long. Can go slightly over there. No music. I mean, fair enough. Render at 1080p, 60 FPS. I mean, that's standard. And most importantly, have fun. So, hello, John aka Chickenfillets here. You've caught me doing some bad acting and a bad intro for this collaboration. Now, in his rules, it mentions no music, but he didn't mention no musicals.
Super Mario RPG. It's not a bad game, but it's pretty disappointing to me. show you the basics, I'm referring to the remake. It's a turn-based game featuring everyone's favorite plumber, here to save the day. But not from Bowser, but from Smithy. So why is it disappointing even though it is gorgeous and full of charm? Well, maybe it's because I have no nostalgia. It's your favorite YouTuber's favorite game, brings them back to the day. However, here in the UK, we weren't blessed with the game. I was a victim of the hype train. So yes, I fell victim to the nostalgia hype train. I thought this was gonna be the next best thing, but it's just okay, it's nothing special. It's just okay, whoa, I just jumped on the hype train. It's just okay, whoa, I just jumped on the hype train. It's your favorite YouTuber's favorite game, brings them back to the day. However, here in the UK, we weren't blessed with the game. I was a victim of the hype train.
Thank you so much, Luca from feiitogaming, James from DReviewTing, and John from chickenfillets. Some of my favorite people there. And yes, I love the musical rendition that John provided. It's hilarious. Honestly, check out his channel if you like all that kind of stuff. It's really cool, really clever. It's finally time to get to my pick. It's a game that I reviewed when it first came out. I didn't really connect with it, and I finished it, but I didn't love it. So here's my experience with Sea of Stars. To many people, Sea of Stars was a long-awaited nostalgia trip, promising to bring forth all of the retro goodness from those classic JRPGs we love, with gorgeous pixel charm, beautiful music, all wrapped up in a modern game. But is that really what we got? Well, kind of. Here's a few reasons why I was actually disappointed with Sea of Stars. The story of Sea of Stars, while charming and infused with a nostalgic tone, can often feel shallow due to its reliance on familiar tropes and lack of emotional depth. The narrative centers around two heroes who are destined to combat an ancient evil, a premise that, while classic, doesn't really take a lot of risks or explore any new storytelling avenues. And the characters, while kind of mostly likable, a lot of times lack nuance or complexity that would have made them feel truly memorable. The motivations and development can seem surface level, with limited moments of introspection or personal growth that would make their journeys really a lot more compelling, in my opinion. And additionally, the pacing of the story felt uneven at times, with long stretches of gameplay or exposition that don't significantly enhance the narrative in a really major way. There was a lot of key moments, such as confrontations with the bad guys or revelations about the game's world. These were often delivered in a straightforward way that really didn't fully capitalize on the dramatic potential. Another issue with this game was actually the heavy reliance on nostalgia. While it does clearly draw inspiration from classic JRPGs like Chrono Trigger, for example, it felt that it borrowed a lot of these elements without fully evolving or innovating on them. The story is a result that, while yes serviceable, might feel overly familiar or predictable for seasoned JRPG players like myself, or maybe you listening to this. So if you were expecting this game to blend nostalgia with fresh narrative ideas, the lack of risks or deeper themes overall really left me feeling that my experience was somewhat disappointing or hollow. Another point of contention here is the combat system. While I do love turn-based mechanics and they were polished and visually engaging, it felt shallow over time. The limited ability set with straightforward strategies and really the lack of meaningful customization left me, as like a seasoned JRPG fan, craving a deeper challenge or maybe a little bit more variety in my experience. Moreover, the pacing of the combat paired with the somewhat reasonable difficulty made it feel a little bit repetitive and detracted from the overall sense of progression and excitement that I wish wish I would have had. And lastly, while Sea of Stars is visually stunning, it's a beautiful game, I would say that its gameplay overall lacks innovation beyond its homage-driven framework. The exploration and puzzles, they were fun, but it's pretty much standard fare and didn't really push any boundaries or offer any new mechanics that really stood out. I think the biggest downfall for Sea of Stars is the adherence to nostalgia. While yes, it did appeal to fans of classic JRPGs like me, it also felt very limiting for those expecting a fresh reinterpretation of this genre. So between the story and some of the gameplay aspects, I really felt that it was a underwhelming experience. And it's quite a shame because I was really looking forward to this game. I love the pixel aesthetic, I love the music, but the story and the gameplay really let me down. Thanks so much for everybody for coming on today. Don't forget to subscribe to every channel featured today. There's so many great content creators out there, and I would love for you to support them and check out their channels as well. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, comment down below. See you next week for another video. Bye-bye.